Most problems don't fail at the beginning, they fail at the end. When the data runs out, when the playbook no longer applies, when what worked to get you to 90% stops working entirely. That final stretch, that last 10%, is where complexity compounds, trade-offs sharpen, and easy answers disappear. It's also where the real thinking begins, because the people who finish, who actually solve the problem, aren't just executing better. They see differently, they decide differently, they're willing to challenge the assumptions everyone else accepted. This is a podcast about that moment, the moment where progress stalls and wisdom takes over. I'm Jason Wadler, and this is The Last 10%, conversations with the people who figured out what others couldn't. Today my guest is Dr. Jason Wersland, better known as Dr. J, the founder of Therabody and creator of the Theragun. He didn't just invent a product, he built an entirely new category. In this episode, you hear how Dr. J followed his ikigai, his sense of purpose, through setbacks, uncertainty, and some of his hardest moments. That purpose became the source of the inspiration, resilience, and wisdom that helped him find his last 10% and build a truly transformative brand. Hi, Dr. J. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being our initial guest on the Last 10% podcast. I can't tell you how much this means to me, and I just want to thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for doing it.
It's an honor and a privilege, especially the way we met.
Yeah,
cool
to
be here.
that, the honor and privilege is mine. And so for most people who know, I teach at Indiana University. Dr. J graciously opened up his journey, has spent his time and wisdom with my students, really talking about ikigai and his path and helping them understand how they could find their ikigai. It really was inspiring, and I just can't thank you enough for that.
I appreciate that. The fact that you and the students took such interest in, without even me really knowing what you're doing. Yeah, those are special. That was a cool experience. When I share that experience with other people, we have a guy I mentioned to you that went to Indiana University for business school.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was sharing with him, he couldn't believe me. He was like, "Are you kidding?" Yeah, it was really cool.
It was amazing. And speaking of amazing, so what I'd love to kick off, because it blew me away when you shared it with me and the students, is just your incredible journey as a founder and how you got to the point of discovering not just a new product, but really creating a new category. So would you mind sharing that?
Where do I start? How far back do you want me to go? Probably the place to start is when I moved to California. I had a flooring store when I was 28 in Utah, and my business partner I found had embezzled most of the money from the business, and I was faced with starting over. I had 2 kids. It was bad. I was going through a divorce. It was all the things, and I went to see my therapist, who has been my therapist since I was really young, and we had a conversation, and he basically kind of shared with me the concept of what the truth is about you, and me learning that gave me a new energy on life, understanding like, oh my gosh, I've been through 28 years of my life and I didn't understand this piece of it. And I just felt like, okay, now I know. And I had the confidence to make the decision to leave Utah and go to school in California. And the reason I went to school in California is there are not any chiropractic schools in Utah. And so I had to make the decision to leave and go to another state. And I chose California because I could get back to see my kids on one flight. There wasn't a layover. And that was the main decision, the reason I made that decision. And little did I know that there were so many things that needed to happen in Los Angeles. They couldn't have happened in any other place, really. So I moved to LA. I start school, what I thought was going to be a 3.5-year program. They miscalculated my hours. So my first day of chiropractic school, I was all ready to go. And I was ready to start ticking off those days. And my counselor walked in and said, "We miscalculated your hours. You have 2 more years of school, of undergrad you have to do." Because I had an arts degree. I didn't have a science degree. And so, yeah. So anyway, I was faced with this idea of like, oh no, now it's 5 years, but I wasn't going to quit. It's just not who I am. And I think the hardest part, to be honest with you, Jason, was my kids. Having to tell them that this isn't a short little stint. And, they think about when you're 3 and then you turn 8. I mean, that's a lot of years, and so
Absolutely.
it was tough.
They were little.
They were little. My daughter was 1 and my son was 2. So they're, 18, 17 months apart. So it still changed me, that piece of it. We didn't really talk about this a lot with the students, but that changed me a lot. It burned me. It was hard to be away from my kids, and also the guilt that I had of, not being the dad that I've always wanted to be. And so anyway, another story, another podcast.
I'll have to come up with a new one.
Yeah. So I'm in school and I start school and I start cranking away, and I started school in 2000, and in my 6th year, I had an experience where I was working part-time for my dad's flooring store in the LA area, him and his business partner, and realized after not passing the national boards 2 times, the first part of national boards 2 times, that I needed to really focus on what I was doing. I was so concerned about making money and paying child support and all those things that I thought I'd just roll through, as long as I did the time, I would be okay, but that's not how it happened. So I ended up quitting. One day I was at Gold's Gym in Venice talking to a buddy of mine, and this is really important, I think, because it was like this eureka moment. And a buddy of mine, we were working out with a bunch of guys in Gold's, and a friend said, "What are you doing?" And I told him, and he said, "Oh, I'm a chiropractor." He said, "Why don't you come and work with me?" And I said, "Well, I got to get my license first." He said, "No, you don't. Not in California. You can work under me and use my license, bill under my license, and then you and I can do a split. That's legal." So I looked into it. It was, my school knew about the program, which was also frustrating. So there, suddenly on January of 2006, I start my practice. I started working with this guy and learning how the patient flows and all those things in real time. And then I was going from home to school to get my clinic hours done. And I was going to this practice around 2:00 in the afternoon. I worked till late that night. So that was kind of it's the rounds. It's what you do. So I'm doing my thing. And I had a 1987 Jeep Wagoneer. And I called it the fishbowl because the windows were huge and just wasn't the most conducive car to be stuck in traffic in LA. And so I saw these motorcycles flying by me. And so one day I just thought, you know what? I know how to ride a motorcycle. So I bought a motorcycle. And that was sort of the beginning of this whole thing. One day I'm flying up the freeway, and you're splitting traffic in Los Angeles. It's legal here. And a delivery truck had blocked a car, and this car came out of nowhere. And I just T-boned the side of this car on the freeway. And I woke up on the freeway on the 110 freeway, laying face up, and I realized what happened. I kind of grabbed my helmet and sat up, and the helmet was broken. And I was thinking to myself, like, I got to be injured. There's got to be something wrong. And I really couldn't feel anything. My hands were numb, and I cut my arm open, and I could feel the blood running down my jacket into my gloves. And I didn't dare take it off because I didn't know how bad it was. And I thought, if I just leave it on there, I won't have to worry about it. So that accident ended up causing a 9mm disc bulge on my neck. I didn't have any other acute injuries where I had to go to the hospital. So I had an option. Do you want to go to the hospital, an ambulance, or do you want to take yourself? So I decided to take myself. That's how this whole thing started, honestly. And I think in my life, I've learned that the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. And a lot of times in life, these hard situations actually end up turning out to be something really amazing. And I didn't want to believe it at the time because it didn't seem like that. It was a lot at the time. I couldn't work. Now suddenly I'm sitting at home and I'm a patient. I'd never been a patient before. I'd played all sorts of sports. I'd never had those season-ending injuries. I'd seen a lot of my friends with shoulders and knees and stuff back in the day, and I just never had that. Now suddenly I was in this situation, and I'm a chiropractor. And I'm looking at my practice, and I'm realizing this massive disconnect between what I can provide for my patients in my clinic, which I thought was the place, versus what someone would get at a hospital or surgery or something. And so I'm suddenly now in real time and for real at recognizing my experience. So you get an MRI, and then they take you to you schedule surgery, and then you got to wait for the inflammation to go down. And so there's all these things. And I just thought, this is how it works. I don't like this. So I was sitting in my practice waiting for my business partner, this guy that I was working with, to treat me. And I'm sitting in this room and I'm thinking, this is crazy. Like, I have to wait for this guy to treat me, and I know what I need. I could actually probably set myself up on some of these modalities, but I'm in so much pain. He's going to now come in here and work on me for 20 minutes to just get the pain to go away. So for me, it's this pain thing. And then we all suffer from pain. And I think what's interesting for me, as I've learned over the years, is we all have sort of this threshold. And I'll go away. My back's been hurting me for a while, but it usually goes away. And then suddenly you're stuck in a situation where, like, it doesn't. And now what? And I think that's where I was, where I realized, like, there's a lot of people in this situation. But at that point, to be honest with you, Jason, I didn't care. It was me. I was worried about me. And I'm thinking, if I can't use my hands, because these are my eyes as a chiropractor, I couldn't feel this hand, then I've got to get that better before I can really start thinking big picture. So I sitting in that room, I looked, there's a vibrating table there that we used for traction. And the science behind the vibration is the body relaxes from the vibration and it can't guard or splint. So as I was thinking through what it did, I thought, oh, wow, I wonder if that'll help me. So I flipped the table on and I rest my arm on the table and the pain went away. Like it was like goosebumps over my whole body. And I was like, oh my God, I just sat there for a second thinking I'm just going to stay on this table all day. But the vibration, just like your glasses or anyone that's listening to this has probably a watch or earrings or earbuds or something that my body accommodated to that stimulus, meaning the stimulus wasn't powerful enough to maintain that pain decrease. My pain slowly came back. So after about 30 or 45 seconds, suddenly now it's all back again. And so I just sat there back and forth, taking my arm off and on that table, just being like, okay, whatever's happening right now, I love this. My business chiro comes in and we talk about what was happening. And he's like, well, I have this thing in the x-ray room you can take home if you want. It's actually a portable vibrating device. I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll take that home. So I take it home and now I'm suffering from the same thing. I'm holding this against my body and I'm putting it aside. And it's this like intermittent pain relief. It wasn't lasting. And so I got on this sort of like, it was like a dog on a bone. I was like, what is going on? Why is this happening? And so I started realizing pain travels to the brain on a pathway at about 55 miles an hour. You can Google it, it's around that. And that's a pain pathway. It's meant to be that way. And it protects us, it guards us, all these things. But when something touches your skin, cold, heat, acupuncture, pins, whatever, when something touches your skin, that information travels to the brain at almost 400 miles an hour. So if you think about what was happening, I was thinking like, wow, okay, if I do something on my skin, then I can actually decrease the pain that I'm experiencing. But this vibration never left my body, like my hands, it was vibrating back and forth. And so it was easy I learned this in real time. It was easy for my body to get used to that because it was like my watch. So then it never came off. So I thinking, well, how do I get that? So I was thinking, what if I had something? And I was like, oh my gosh, I can make that. So I was like, if I had something was on and off and on and off, and I could control the speed. So I was like, I'll try it. I went to my garage. I grew up, my family had a farm and I spent my life in flooring. So I was really familiar with power tools. And so I went to my garage and I bring in a jigsaw and I start messing around with this jigsaw. And if those of you who don't know, the jigsaw goes up and down and it's got different lengths of amplitude, the distance that the blade travels. And so I grabbed the one that I thought would be right. I started messing around with this jigsaw in my house and I put it on my body and it was the most amazing feeling. It was the same feeling as this table, but it was different. And I could actually keep the pain down, like of 0 to 10, I could keep it around a 5, which is, that was a blessing at the time because I felt like I was on 10.
And you're solving this for yourself. You're you're not at this point saying, oh, I could solve for other people.
No.
This is like, I want to feel better.
No, that's
The
really
pain
good point.
was not for the customer at that point. The pain point was for you.
Yeah, trust me, it was a Makita jigsaw. The last thing in the world I thought about doing was sharing this with anyone. I tell people this, it was a selfish moment. I remember thinking like, I don't really care what anyone else has to say to me. This works. And so I just kept using it. I'd use it during the night. I'd use it to go to before I got in the shower because I realized if I did it right, that I could decrease my pain for a period of time, 8-10 minutes, and then it would slowly come back. And so my goal was to keep myself out of pain between my treatments. And that hasn't changed. It's the exact same concept for anyone that has a Theragun. It's keeping your body out of pain between those times when you can have someone else treat you. So I slowly got myself better. My accident was October 17th of 2007. In January of 2008 was when I discovered this thing. And I started using it religiously everywhere. I actually bought one of those adapters for my car. I was driving my Jeep around. I'd plug it in and I'd plug the thing in the car and I'd just drive around with this thing.
Had you shared it with anyone else at that point?
No. I mean, I started asking people about that. Like I started asking medical sales reps or other chiropractors. My brother's a chiropractor in Utah. And I would text people and say, have you ever seen anything like this? And it wasn't like, oh, maybe. It was like, no, what are you talking about? So that's the first time I realized like, oh, wow. Like, do people don't know about this? So I went back to practice. Now it's July of 2008. Go back to practice. I was ready to go, and I just dug in, and my pain was okay. I was using this Theragun at Gold's Gym. I would take it. It wasn't called Theragun at the time. Trust me. It was, I don't even know what we call it.
It was called the
Thumper or
Makita
something.
jigsaw with a
So I'd take it to the gym and guys would laugh at me. And, I just started realizing what this did for performance, the recovery aspect, that I could use it at the gym and I wouldn't be sore. And
so
as
went
I
from
was,
pain management to actual performance enhancement.
yeah. And it wasn't on purpose. I just started recognizing that tear down of the tissues needed a little help. And this was helping. So I was trying to get my strength back in the gym. So I was trying to push that edge of like how far I could go without really injuring myself again. And I found myself sore a lot of times. And so I'd use this gun at night and I'd go to sleep, wake up the next morning, I wouldn't be sore. I was thinking that how am I the only one who knows this? So one day, now it's October of 2008, sorry. And my secretary walks in and hands me the paperwork of a patient. And as I'm going through this patient's paperwork, I'm empathizing with what's happening. His age, his injury, his income, his insurance, like all these things were just not ideal for me to get him better. And his injury was very similar to mine. So Jason, I think we talked about this when I was talking with your students, but that was the moment where it hit me, because I'd seen many patients up to that point, but no one had really had or presented with the same issues that I had. And so I was like, man, how do I tell him about this? So I took his x-rays. I asked him to come back the next day, which is what you do. We'll review your x-rays. I tried to treat him a little bit just to get the pain out away so that he could sleep that night. Comes back the next day, brings his wife with him. And I show up with my Makita jigsaw inside of a Ralph's paper grocery bag. Last thing in the world I thought would happen. I didn't want to see it. Like I was so nervous. As a chiropractor, you're already a little bit careful about the edges that you play in, because you're already kind of looked at a lot side-eyed sometimes.
Breaking necks, cashing checks, right?
Yeah. Never heard that one. I like that one. So I pulled it out of the bag and I turned it on and I started using it on him. I just didn't really say much. I just said, hey, I'm going to show you something. And he knew immediately, like it spoke a language. Wow. And he just looked at me like, what is that? So long story short, Jason, I started using it on him and then I'd let him take it home. And then I was teaching him like, hey, let me show you what I just did, because I just went through that and hopefully it can have the same impact on you. And it did. So at the end of his care, I'd been gone to Utah to see my family for a couple of weeks. And he just had the gun. And by that time, I wasn't treating him as often because he was really able to move and get through the days. So I come back and I'm walking my office and he's waiting in my treatment room. And I walk in and he says, oh my God, this saved my life. I think I shared with you, but you get to know your patients really well, especially when they're in pain and you're seeing them regularly. And he kind of knew my doubts and my fears about this thing. Like, do I take it to the world? And do I, and he just looked at me like almost.
Were you thinking maybe this is a product I can take?
Yeah, because I was watching what it was doing for him. And I was so fascinated by the fact that he was having the same experience that I did. This guy from another place, I realized it's a nervous system thing. His nervous system is the same as mine. His blood flows, his bones work, his muscles, it's all the same thing. And that's when it started dawning on me like, oh my God, how is there not something like this in the world?
Why do you think that is? I mean, there's a confluence of events that happened that probably weren't apparent as you were going through it, that if they hadn't happened, you probably would not have gotten to this point.
No, 100%. There were these moments where I realized, and you said it a minute ago, but I wasn't doing this to like bring it to the world. So coming out and realizing like, my gosh, this actually works for people. That was the moment where I like, okay, I got to figure this out. If I'm going to talk about this, I need to know what it does.
Right.
And it was that moment when he said that to me that the universe sort of like opened this idea that like, hey, you got to take this to the world. And that was scary. I remember how real that felt. Oh man, this is going to be a chore. So that was 2009. So over the next 8 years, I figured it out. I treated, the 10,000 hour rule. I treated every athlete and celebrity you can think of, but that really wasn't the point. The point for me was this thing didn't care it was a celebrity or an athlete. It didn't care if it was my mom or my wife or, this famous person. And I started realizing the protocols applied for everyone. So as I started treating people, I developed 5 different versions. I keep this one here on the wall down here at the bottom. That's where I ended up to have my V1. So that was
It's
my
the
very first
evolution
version.
of man, right? We're watching the evolution of Therabody at that point.
Yeah. And there were moments, like I didn't like that first one. There were a lot of things I didn't like about it, but I started understanding balance, mechanics, frequency, amplitude, torque, all these things that made it work. So in 2016, I met my business partner I had gone through 3 business partners, every nightmare story you can imagine. They were stealing my money and lying to me about how much they cost. And it was a huge challenge. Every single experience I had in those 8 years developed me.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate saying that because it's like, going to boot camp, it was like hard, but I didn't realize that it was leading up to these things. I meet my business partner in 2016. We had the G1 I just showed you, and we launched the G1 in June of 16. At
Mm-hmm.
the first day
Almost
our
10 years,
official.
right? Another month will be
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah, yeah, it's been 10 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we just celebrated our 10th year. Thank you. So our first time into the world was at the CrossFit Games here in California, and I remember it's so real how many the comments people were saying, and oh my God, I could make one of these, and then I would use it on them, and they'd be like, oh wow, so it was crazy. So we launched the company, and my wife started. I met my wife outside of Therabody. The team wanted to hire her, so they brought her on in 2017. And I tell people this all the time, but it wouldn't be what it is today. You wouldn't know it if it wasn't for her, because she got it into the press, she got it into pop culture, she got it on TV shows, and she had a system, and she ran our PR for 5 years. So it really was part me, part my business partner, part my wife, part all these other people that helped it grow. I learned a lot about contribution and people getting behind something like this that changed people's lives. So yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about the company and where we're at today and stuff, but
Wow.
that's kind of the origins of it.
It's amazing. And your purpose was pure, right? From the beginning, it was, I need to solve pain. I need to solve my pain. Then I need to solve that patient's pain. And then it was, who else's pain can I solve?
Yeah. Cause for me, like you said, I realized we all have it.
Mm-hmm.
No one's exclusive to this. Like, it's all something we suffer from. And you mentioned earlier my ikigai. I had learned that early on. I had known what that was back when I talked to my therapist, and I didn't believe it was possible. When I drew the circles and I started looking at what it was, I thought, this is almost impossible. Like, you have to have a lot of money, and you have to have all these things that my brain was telling me, keeping me away from that. Everyone's journey is different. And my journey took me through this path. And one day I remember thinking, like, oh my God, I'm actually doing this right now.
Mm-hmm.
I love what I do. People love it. It's helping, it's generating revenue, it's creating jobs. It still is beyond my wildest dreams.
Well, and I love that. And to me, I say there's 3 P's to success, which is purpose, passion, and perseverance, right? And the perseverance, it's really, to me, your journey is one of resilience and this idea of anti-fragility, which anti-fragility is not that I'm just going to get through it, but I'm going to get through it. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to apply it and get stronger. And
I love that.
when we went through what you did, the path that you got, if you had not worked in the flooring store, right, and knew how to work with tools, if you had not met the person in Venice who said, come and work with my chiropractic practice, if you had not had your accident, if you had not had the patient who came in and their pain resonated with you, if all those things had not happened, you may not have the journey that you're on today.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
all those things. And that, to me, when I think about that last 10%, because it really is putting your wisdom that you had from, you mentioned the 10,000 times or 10,000 hours, the persistence, in terms of, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to take that Makita jigsaw and I'm going to figure this out. Right. And then the pure purpose of, I need to solve my pain, because if I can do that, then I can solve other people's pain. And then as you start to go, it's like, who else's pain can I solve? And so to me, you had so many confluence of events and eureka moments that, credit to you, because most people can't do it. It's how you put those together to solve and then to take it to this next level. Because the other piece of wisdom to me is, you realize it wasn't just about you, it was about everyone else. And how can I have other people help me on this journey?
Yeah. Amen to all of that. Character is the ability to follow through with the decision after the emotion of making the decision is gone. And
Can
so
you
for
say
me,
that one more time? Because I think that is the mantra
that I would love people to take with them?
I learned this from when I was young, and I always thought that that's a really important trait to have. So I wanted to understand it. But character is the ability to follow through with a decision after the emotion of making the decision is gone. We've all been there. I'm never going to do this again. I swear I will never do this again. And so for me, when I made a promise, I wanted to keep that promise. And that really meant a lot to me, especially in the early days. And when you have someone that's in pain and they look at you with that look in their eye, how dare you lie to them? You need to keep your character. And so for me, that was a really important aspect. We didn't talk a lot about this with the students, but can't tell you how many times I drove a thing to a client at midnight because I told them that they'd have it. And, there's just so many opportunities like that. I think when you're building a company that you can rationalize away. Oh, it's late and they're not home. And you start listening to the voices in your head instead of listening to the character, the promise you made. And so for me, that's a big one. I've tried
foundational. It's absolutely foundational. I agree. So let me ask you this, Dr. J. I mean, we could go on for hours. I love talking with you, and every time we talk, I learn something new. I unpeel back an aspect that I was not expecting. But I'm curious. You've built not just a product and a brand, but a category, right? And there's a lot of people that are following on, not nearly as good as yours. But I'm curious now because to me, your purpose is so big, and it's potentially, from my perspective, bigger than this. And I'm curious, what's next on your journey? What's next on your horizon that you would say, not that you're done with this, but is there something else that you're saying, there's a need out there that is something I think I can work on and fulfill?
Yeah, great question, Jason. Part of this journey has been trusting the universe and listening to that. So I think anyone that's done anything significant in their life, and it's not relative to mine, it's relative to their life, they have those moments where something whispers to them or they feel an inspiration to do something, and it's kind of scary, but we all have that. And I think for me, I look at it and say, we've got 7 million Theraguns in the world, roughly.
Incredible.
Let's say between 7 and 8. Which if you look at the population of the world, that's like 0.000 something. It's like nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. But for me, I feel the responsibility to make sure that every one of those people that have a Theragun get the most out of it. So I did a post the other day about tennis elbow. I just did what I normally do with my clients and my patients. I drew on my arm and I did this stuff and I had a guy film it and I sent it to our team in China just because they were asking for it. And it performed like 250% more than the last video. And so for me, I've realized, Jason, the next thing is I need to be a beacon of education. I want people to see like, oh my God, I have a Theragun. I'm going to get on. I need to find out what Dr. J says about this and how do I use it for plantar fasciitis and how to use it to go to sleep and how to use it to just decrease my pain. And so I feel like there's a lot of people out there that got a Theragun because it's like an iPhone. Like I got to get one of these things. But how many of us really know how to use our phones, other than the standard things? So for me, that's what it is. It's like I have to provide education. So that's one of the pillars is education. And then I feel called to inspire people to understand that the challenges in life are there to make you better. They're not there for you to piss and moan about. So I want to be in front of more people because I've realized that what I've been through has a lot of really important principles like life. So that's, you asked what's next. What's next is education. I want to educate the world, at least the people that understand what this is. I met a guy in Africa 2 years ago, special person, and he's a leader, a really important leader. And we were sitting next to each other on a bus. We were driving out to this crazy place in Africa. And I was asking him about how he did what he does. And he said something to me that has stuck with me. And it resonated so strongly. But he said, I believe that my dream should be something that I will never see come to pass. Because if I wake up and I'm done, then what do I do now?
Where's my purpose?
So he says, my purpose needs to be so big that I'll never see it happen so that I wake up every morning with that same desire. And I was like, that's exactly how I feel. So I want every house in the world to have a Theragun, just like, we have pencil sharpeners and all those things that were just standard in our house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big task. I've done the math on this. And there's about 1.7 billion people in first world countries. So the places that have homes and flushing electricity and flushing toilets and that, and we haven't even come close to 1% of those people.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like my journey is just begun. I can't be in front of enough people telling them what this is. And I get so inspired because when I do that, I have more people come to me after and say, oh my God, thank you for doing this. It helped my mom. It saved my husband. I get all of these really amazing testimonials. So it's education, it's testimonials, and it's just being in front of people to inspire them to follow their dreams, to find your ikigai, to do your thing. Because if we all had our own ikigai, by the way, yours is different than mine, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like we can all have our own ikigai and we sort of up level each other. So
Mm-hmm.
it might be sort of, la Jason, but that's my purpose.
I don't think it's la la, especially coming from you, because it's real, right? There's no
It is
fluff
for
around
me.
that,
Yeah.
right? And you've proven it. You've proven it against the path that you've been on and the journey that you're going on. So I can't thank you enough, for sharing all of what you just shared. And whatever I can do to help you get to your ikigai and never achieve your dream, I'm happy to do that. So I want to thank you again just for I can't imagine a better way to start this podcast than with you, Dr. J. So thank you for sharing your journey, your wisdom, your perspectives, and your journey of resilience. And I truly believe that there's so many people who will not only learn from it, but benefit from it and apply some of these learnings to what they're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. It means a lot. Appreciate it.
All the best.
Thank you to Dr. J for sharing his inspirational journey that got him to find the last 10% that created a new category. To find the last 10% for your business, become a member at thewisory.com to gain insights from our world-class advisors and our IntelliQ platform, only at The Wisory.